Hey guys, welcome to Ezekiel 41. Now, if you don't already know, we're in that stretch of chapters in Ezekiel that's just really giving into great detail about a certain structure. Now, I want you to note something. We've already done one chapter. I want you to note it's going to seem kind of boring until you realize what structure he's talking about. So these details may seem off-putting. They may seem, tedious. But there's a purpose to this. And so it's important that we read every bit of it that goes along with this, because there may be certain little bits of information hidden in the text that we can discover. Let's get into this. Dimensions of the sanctuary. Now, the previous chapter was a new city, a new temple. Notice he says a new city. Well, there's never been a new Jerusalem, but there's one coming. There's been several temples, but this is associated with a new city. Well, the New Jerusalem hasn't come yet. So the conclusion one comes to immediately is that this particular temple being measured and being given the dimensions of is the temple of the New Jerusalem. Let's see what we can discover as we go through these chapters, and there's quite a few of them. Then he brought me into the sanctuary and measured the doorposts, 6 cubits wide on one side and 6 cubits wide on the other side, the width of the tabernacle. The width of the entryway was 10 cubits, and the side walls of the entrance were 5 cubits on this side and 5 cubits on the other side. And he measured its length, 40 cubits, and its width, 20 cubits. And one thing that somebody might ask is, why is all this detail in here? What purpose does it serve? It doesn't mean anything. It's a waste of time. And you know what? The first few times I read the Bible, I thought that. There's information in here that really doesn't matter to anything, except for maybe one or two specific people. But I was wrong. I was very wrong. See, when people start talking about calculating the number of the beast, 666, they want to go to gematria. I've done a video on gematria. You can search gematria in the little search bar on my channel and find those videos. That's demonic. Gematria is very demonic. So, how do you calculate the number of his name? Well, there's a book in the Bible literally called Numbers. And I used to think, why is this here? And what does all this data in the front mean? It shows you how to calculate the number of the name. Somebody out there smart enough to figure it out. And when they do, they can identify specifically who the Antichrist is in every generation. And they could find out who he is in this generation. Because he's alive right now. The man who is going to play that role is alive right now. I'm not smart enough to figure it out, but somebody out there is. They just haven't come to the realization that the book of Numbers is the place where we find the secret. Gematria is not. Because Gematria tells you all kinds of people that have a number in their name, 666. Sorry, that was a spider. You can hear the gospel somewhere else. Go ahead, go away. So, that brings us to this. Why is all this detail in here? For a purpose. It's meant to teach us something. It may not be obvious now, but it will be later. Verse 3, also he went inside and measured the doorposts, 2 cubits, and the entrance 6 cubits high, and the width of the entrance 7 cubits. He measured the length 20 cubits and the width 20 cubits beyond the sanctuary. And he said to me, this is the most holy place. The most holy place. Next he measured the wall of the temple, 6 cubits. The width of each side chamber all around the temple was 4 cubits on every side. Now, if you stop and think about the measurement he's using here. So here's one of your secrets. The measurement he's using here. These entranceways and that are meant to facilitate people coming in. Think about how big these entrances are. Just pointing something out. Verse 5, next he measured the wall of the temple, 6 cubits. The width of each side chamber all around the temple was 4 cubits on every side. The side chamber were at 3 stories, one above the other. 30 chambers in each story. Stop and think about this. What is a story? It's about 8 feet. 8 to 10 feet is a story. So the side chambers were 3 stories tall, each chamber one above the other, and there were 30 chambers existing in each of those stories. That's a big building. They rested on ledges, which were for the side chambers all around, that they might be supported, but not fastened to the wall or the temple. As one went up from story to story, the side chambers became wider all around, because their supporting ledges in the wall of the temple ascended like steps. Therefore, the width of the structure increased as one went up from the lowest story to the highest by way of the middle one. So as you went higher in the building, it got bigger. And yet it was smaller at the bottom. How is that possible? Construction-wise, that's impossible to build. See what I mean by little secrets hidden in there? So when you think about it, it's like, wait a minute. That don't make no sense. What is going on here? Verse 8, I also saw an elevation all around the temple. It was the foundation of the side chambers, a full rod that is 6 cubits high. The thickness of the outer wall of the side chambers was 5 cubits. Now, what is a cubit? It's about 18 inches. Typically, it's from your elbow to the tip of your middle finger. So this was 5 cubits thick. That's pretty thick. That's really thick. And so also the remaining terrace by the place of the side chambers of the temple. Verse 10, and between it and the wall chambers was a width of 20 cubits all around the temple on every side. The doors of the side chambers opened on the terrace, one door toward the north and another toward the south, and the width of the terrace was 5 cubits all around. The building that faced the separating courtyard at its western end was 70 cubits wide. The wall of the building was 5 cubits thick all around, and its length 90 cubits. Dimensions and design. Oh, sorry, that's extra text. Dimensions and design of the temple. Verse 13. So he measured the temple 100 cubits long, and the separating courtyard with the building and its walls was 100 cubits long. Also, the width of the eastern face of the temple, including the separating courtyard, was 100 cubits. He measured the length of the building behind it, facing the separating courtyard, with its galleries on the one side and on the other side, 100 cubits, as well as the inner temple and the porches of the court. Their doorposts and the beveled window frames and the galleries all around their 3 stories opposite the threshold were paneled with wood from the ground to the windows. The windows were covered. From the space above the door, even to the inner room, as well as outside and on every wall all around, inside and outside by measure. And it was made with cherubim and palm trees, a palm tree between cherub and cherub. Each cherub had 2 faces, so that the face of a man was toward a palm tree on the one side, and the face of a young lion toward a palm tree on the other side. Thus it was made throughout the temple all around. So basically what you have is you have a cherub, and one face is facing one way along the wall, one face is facing the other way along the wall, and one faces the palm tree in front of it, and one faces the palm tree behind it. And each one does that all the way around. There's significance in that, but I'm not 100% sure what it is. So that, verse 19, the face of a man was toward the palm tree. Oh, we read that one. Verse 20, from the floor to the space above the door, and on the wall of the sanctuary, cherubim and palm trees were carved. The doorposts of the temple were square, as was the front of the sanctuary. Their appearance was similar. The altar was of wood, 3 cubits high, and its length 2 cubits. Its corners, its lengths, and its sides were of wood. And he said to me, this is the table that is before the Lord. The temple and the sanctuary had 2 doors. Now, think about that table for just a minute. The altar was of wood, 3 cubits high, and its length 2 cubits. Sorry, got another spider on me. Get out of here, boys. What's wrong with y'all? And its length 2 cubits. Its corners, its length, and its sides were of wood. So the length of the table was 2 cubits long, but the table was 3 cubits high. Pretty big table. This is the table that is before the Lord. The temple and the sanctuary had 2 doors. Verse 24, the doors had 2 panels apiece, 2 folding panels, 2 panels for one door and 2 panels for the other door. Cherubim and palm trees were carved on the doors of the temple, just as they were carved on the walls. A wooden canopy was on the front of the vestibule outside. There were beveled window frames and palm trees on one side and on the other, on the sides of the vestibule, also on the side chambers of the temple, and on the canopies. Very, very detailed. Very detailed. But notice some of these dimensions are kind of, wait a minute, that's a little larger than normal. Some of them start to give you the impression, is this for bigger than normal people? Maybe. As we move through these chapters, you're going to start to come to a greater conclusion here on this. And again, this is a specific temple for a specific purpose. This kind of temple hasn't existed before. To my knowledge and the research that I've done, the little bit of research that I've done, this type of temple and these dimensions hasn't officially existed. Nobody can ever get it right. Why is he showing Ezekiel these details? Why is he giving him this information? For a purpose. Remember, everything in Ezekiel so far has been future tense, except for a couple of key points. So maybe this is a future temple for what did it say in the last one? A new city, a new temple. What is the new city? Because Jerusalem isn't new. It's been there all this time. But there is a new Jerusalem coming. So maybe this is the new temple for that city. We'll find out as we go through this. Tomorrow will be Ezekiel 42, the chambers for the priests. We're going to keep going through details. It's going to be a little boring, but there's a purpose behind it because it's going to show us some things. Today was Ezekiel 41. Thank you guys for watching this. Stick with me through this. I think you may find some very interesting enlightenment on the other end. I love you all very much, and I'll see you in the next one.